Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We stopped at imagination last time, so and it's very fitting that we come to this section because the whole chapter is about cosmic imagination, unless I'm mistaken. So the Shaykh al-Akbar says, in spite of the fact that meanings and sensory forms are mutually contradictory, um, imagination possesses the strength to combine the two. Why are they mutually contradictory for those who can answer or participate? Why are meanings and sensory forms mutually contradictory?
Is it because of the opposing nature of the names of Allah?
Uh, yeah, that's getting a bit philosophical. I mean, I know the whole text is philosophical, but just to put it in simpler terms, um, sensory forms and meanings are mutually contradictory because, okay, where do sensory forms come from? Like, if we have five worlds,
Yeah.
which world do sensory forms come from? Sensory forms come from the physical world, no?
Yes.
Okay. So meanings come from the world of spirits. Like the world of spirits and the world of meanings, it's the same level. It's the same world. So you can call it the world of spirits, you can call it the world of meanings. Same level. So in light of that, why would they be mutually contradictory? Because physical, what do we call them? Sensory forms, physical forms, sensory forms. They are dense. They're dense. They're dark, like relatively dark. Whereas meanings and spirits are what? They're subtle, aren't they? Like you can't really grasp it. Whereas the density of a physical form can be grasped with like physically. And spirits are luminous by nature. The world of meanings and spirits is luminous. Here is relatively dark compared to that. Like in the chain of being, let's call it the chain of being, as you go down from the higher world to the lower world, it gets darker. So the world of imagination is brighter than the physical world, which is the darkest place of all. And then the world of spirits is even more luminous than the world of imagination. So the world of imagination is denser and darker in relation to the world of spirits. And of course, the physical world is the densest and most dark level of all compared to the previous levels. So, in light of that, this is why sensory forms and meanings are mutually contradictory. They don't come together. Meanings and spirits are luminous, physical forms are dark. Meanings and spirits are subtle, they cannot be grasped, and whereas physical objects are dense. Does that make sense? So, that's what makes the imagination, and especially the level of imagination so special. Because imagination is the meeting point where these two contradictory properties can be brought together. Does that make sense? Because in imagination, meaning is given physical form. So they come together. And the most obvious example of that is in dreams, which we talked about last time in some of the previous sessions. Okay, so imagination possesses so this is the way we think about it. If imagination is capable of doing that, capability equals power. It's not a theoretical construct, it's real. So when I say imagination is capable, for French speakers, please speak up. This reminds me of the word pouvoir, because pouvoir is the capability of doing something, but it's also equal to power. Your ability to do something is equivalent to power. So this is why we say, and it's not metaphorical, the speech. Imagination possesses the strength to combine the two. Hence, Ibn al-Arabi, right, says Ibn al-Arabi, he says it manifests the divine name, the strong, which is not a name you would have expected necessarily. So the divine name, the strong, manifests the imagination. So strength, it's connected to imagination. And the property of strength coming from the divine name, the strong, comes, right? Yeah, manifests the imagination. It is connected to imagination, right? Okay. God possesses the strength, or sorry, God possesses strength because of the inaccessibility of some or all of the possible things. Izzah is an interesting word. It can also mean strength in itself, right? Izzah, it can mean might. It can also mean honor and dignity, right? Um, when we talk about the someone having Izzah, it's someone having uh, like this inviolable honor, right? Here he chooses to translate the word as inaccessible, which makes sense in this context, right? God possesses strength because of the inaccessibility of some or all of the possible things, but it's like you have to understand inaccessible in what way, not in an abstract way. That is, the fact that they do not accept opposites. There are certain possible things that don't accept opposites. We just talked about them, like the physical, sensorial things don't accept meanings and spirits, and vice versa, right? Like they're mutually contradictory. So one of the effects of strength is the creation of the world of imagination in order to make manifest within it the fact that it brings together all opposites, or what's called the coincidenta oppositorum. Coincidenta oppositorum. The imagination is where opposites can be brought together. Mutually contradictory things can be brought together. It is impossible for sense perception or the rational faculty to bring together opposites, right? But it is not impossible for imagination. Hence, the authority and strength of the strong only became manifest in the creation of the imaginal faculty, and the world of imagination. So, he's talking microcosm and macrocosm, because imagination in the microcosm is your imaginal faculty, right? Uh, and then on a macrocosmic scale, as a level of reality that literally exists, it's called the world of imagination, which is the closest thing to a denotation of the real. Because like there's nothing that denotes God. That would kind of like negate the whole ethos of Islam. Like you can't say that like the spirit denotes God, like it points to God directly, because then you could define God. God can't be defined. He's too transcendent for that. So then he says that the world of imagination is like the closest thing that could do that, if such a thing could actually exist, if such a proof could actually exist. From dalala, you also get dalil, proof. For the real is the first and the last, the manifest and non-manifest, right? These are the contradictory opposites that are being brought together. Abu Sa'id al-Kharaz was asked, through what have you known God? He answered, through the fact that he brings opposites together. Then he recited this Quranic verse. Were all this not in a single entity with a capital E, there would be no prophet, since no one denies the relationships. One person may have a multiplicity of relationships, so he is a father, son, paternal uncle, maternal uncle, and so on. Yet he is he, no one else. Hence, nothing has truly gained possession of the divine form except imagination. because the divine form can do anything, and that's what imagination does as well, just about. And this is something that no one can deny, since he finds imagination in himself, and he sees it in his dreams. That's the closest place you see the activity of imagination going on. Hence, he sees the impossible existence, the impossible existence as existence. And he sees it like happening in his dreams, for example. The visions of God's friends often involve the embodiment, tajassud, of angels or prophets, or even God, though these objects of vision do not, in fact, possess bodies. In a similar way, the cosmos itself consists of non existent meanings, displayed or embodied in manifest being. So the cosmos as a whole is nothing but imagination. So he's drawing an analogy, isn't he? He's saying the visions that God's saints or friends have, it's where in these visions they can see angels become embodied, they can see prophets become embodied, or they can even see God Himself become embodied in a vision. By the way, it can be a waking vision, it can also be a sleeping vision. If it's a sleeping vision, it's called a dream. And if it's a waking vision, it's just called a vision, right? Um, Although, like, you could say that like angels don't possess bodies, prophets do possess bodies, but just not after death, right? Um, And then God Himself obviously does not possess an intrinsic body. So I think the point he's making there is that the the imagination that's embodied in the vision gives bodies to these spiritual forms, right? In a similar way, the cosmos itself consists of non-existent meanings, right? Because in the world of meanings, meaning can exist even if it's like meaning can, I guess, can it exist by itself? I mean, yeah, if it exists, but it does not become embodied in the cosmos, it's said to be non-existent, even though, like in the world of meanings, it's technically there on its own level, right? So, in a similar way, the cosmos itself consists of non-existent meanings displayed or embodied in manifest being. So God Himself, as al-Bahir, the manifest, embodies those meanings, right? Himself. So he's talking about again wahdat al-wujud. So the cosmos. So what does that make the cosmos then, right? If God Himself is the one who's giving form to non-existent meanings by embodying them through His own wujud, through His own existence, through His own being, that makes the whole cosmos imagination. That's what it is. The entire universe. So Ibn Arabi says this like in a more poetic way somewhere else. He says like the whole universe is just pure sorcery. It makes you think that it's an actual independently subsisting thing when it's not. It makes you think that it's something that's intrinsically there, but it's not. It's like sorcery, it's like magic. The whole universe is magic, right? Um, and then he says, like, if you say that it's the cosmos, you're correct. If you say that it's not the cosmos, you're correct. And if you say that it is God, you're correct. And if you say it's not God, you're also correct. And if you say it's both, you're correct. And if you say it's neither nor, you're also correct. Yes, Tina, go ahead. Uh, Tina, go ahead, but maybe your mic is muted if you're speaking.
So sorry. Um, yes, so I would like you to help me with something. I have problems with entering the word imagination because in
Yes.
what springs to my mind, it's the connection, very close connection to something delusional, like when you
Ah,
say it's only in your imagination, whereas the way you and Ibn Arabi describes it is completely different. So maybe you could help me, or perhaps someone else, to deconstruct the concept of imagination, perhaps with another word or a way of tackling it. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant question, by the way. Well, Samir Mahmood talks about this in his latest podcast. So that's worth checking out, by the way. But just a short answer to that is that, yeah, there is, yeah, so Ibn Arabi is making a distinction between what we can call real imagination and various gradations of imagination, and imagination that is false. There is something called a false imagination. That's called fantasy. We can call it fantasy. And in Arabic, so if you just recall the Arabic words, if you're able to, Tina, um, the, the more what we might call delusional fantasy or fake fantasy is called wahm, wahm, wahm. Yeah. Um, and the fantasy that refers to something that's more real, that's an operation of an actual faculty of the mind, and has its reference, right? It's referential base that goes back to a real degree in existence in the cosmos. It's called khayal. Wahm is more delusion, and khayal is more real. Um, but Ibn Arabi doesn't really use these terms in a completely technical sense. Um, in fact, I suspect sometimes he uses them interchangeably, but just to keep things simple, you can think of fantasy as delusion, right? Like something that you're just imagining in your head, like, I wish that I was the CEO of this company, even though I'm a very lazy person. That's just never going to happen for so many reasons, right? That's just fantasy. That's fantastical. As opposed to someone else who went to business school, right? And he studies hard and he's good in business. And he dreams about becoming CEO one day. He's using the power of his imagination to project himself into an imagined future in which he succeeds and becomes one due to an insight into his own inner capabilities. But he's using his imagination to give reality to that. That's real imagination, for example, right? And then you've got the imagination of artists. So Samir Mahmood will talk about that as well. Artists usually intuit something deeper. That intuition is connected to this realm of imagination. And then they try to embody that intuition and bring it into reality so that people can have an insight into something unique and into something like uniquely pleasing as well. Um, that really affects the viewer when he sees that painting or whatever work of art the artist has made, and if it's really good, then it becomes transformative. So that's the difference. So you're right. We have more than one understanding of imagination. So one of it is delusional, and the other understanding of it is that it's not delusional. It's actually like a very powerful tool that connects to a very powerful level of reality.
Thank you. It cleared it all.
Okay, brilliant. And it is like an extraordinary discussion because like if you go back to the beginning of this book in the introduction, that's a very powerful point that Tina was alluding to because Professor William Chittick says, what does he call the book? Sufi Path of Knowledge, but the subtitle is The Metaphysics of Imagination. So this whole book is about the metaphysics of imagination, right? Because he says that at some point along the trajectory of Western history, people have eroded or eradicated this level that's called the world of imagination, so that you only have the sensory world and reason, and nothing in between them to bring them together, right? So most people don't really understand that there's a whole level of reality that exists, right? Okay. Um, where do we get up to here? Okay. Okay. So the cosmos as a whole is nothing but imagination. The prophet said, I saw my Lord in the form of a youth, That's a good example of God becoming embodied. And then he describes him like as a handsome youth wearing green silk and golden sandals, flowing long black hair, and a beardless face. Um, this is like the meanings the sleeper sees in his dreams within sensory forms. The reason for this is that the reality of imagination is to embody that which is not properly a body. Like knowledge is not a body. So imagination will give knowledge a body. It does this because its presence gives us to it. So like imagination comes from a certain presence. The power of that presence enables it to embody meanings. And none of the strata is like levels, the tabaqat, none of the strata of the cosmos makes known the situation as it really is, except this imaginal presence. So this imaginal presence is the closest thing to indicating reality itself. Why? Let's see. And within it, the realities become manifest as they are in themselves. The truth of affairs is that you should say concerning everything that you see or perceive through whatever faculty perception takes place. He, not he. Huwa la huwa. Just as God said, you did not throw when you threw. Okay. That's the truth you see in imagination, because imagination brings together what? Contradictions, opposites, right? Oxymorons, paradoxes, especially paradoxes. That is what the whole universe is. The whole universe is like him, not him. That's what it is. That's what it actually is. The whole cosmos is God in one sense, and it's also not him in another sense. It's this level of ambiguity. Um, this is what William Che calls the radical ambiguity of existence. So if you see that, you've gotten what reality is. This is what reality is. That's why the level of imagination indicates that. So you do not doubt in the state of dreaming that the form you see is identical with what it is said to be, right? And you do not doubt in the interpretation when you wake up that it was not it. You will not doubt in sound, rational consideration that the situation is, you could translate that as it and not it. Or if we refer back to God, him, not him. So it was it, but it also wasn't it. It was said to Abu Sa'id al-Kharaz, through what have you known God? He replied, to the fact that he brings opposites together. So every entity qualified by existence is it, not it. Correct? Since every entity is just a manifestation of God, it's him. But of course, are you actually looking at God with your own eyes? In another sense, not really. So it is him and not him. The whole cosmos is he, not he. The real manifests through form, right? The real manifests through form is he, not he. He is the limited who is not limited, the seen who is not seen. This situation becomes manifest in the imaginal presence when a person is asleep or absent, غيبوبة, from outward sensory things, in whatever manner. Imagination in sleep is the most complete and general in existence, since it belongs to both the Gnostics and the common people. So it's like the widest realm accessible to all human beings, the elite and the non-elite. Okay. As for the spiritual states of absence, ghaiba, so he's talking about a technical Sufi term, annihilation, fana, obliteration, mahu, and the like, the common people do not experience them in respect of the divine things. Let me just let these people in, if they are already in or not. Yes, here we go. Okay. God has brought no engendered thing into existence as it is in itself, except in its presence. Hence, God brought this imaginal presence into existence in order to make manifest the situation, which is the root, as it is in itself. So know that the manifest and the loci manifestation, which are the entities, is the real being, الوجود الحق, God, and that it is not it, because of the shapes and attributes, which are those of the possible entities through which it became manifest. Through which it became manifest. Yeah, any questions? Okay. The root kha ya lam, from which khayal is derived, is employed a single time in the relevant meaning in the Quran. In telling the story of Moses and the sorcerers, the Quran says that the sorcerers threw down their staffs, which promptly turned into serpents. As a result, Moses was made to imagine by their sorcery that their ropes and staffs were sliding, right? That like they were snakes. The term is used in a similar sense in a small number of hadiths. These few instances were sufficient to allow Al Ghazali to provide detailed discussions of imagination as an Islamic concept, just as Al Farabi and Avicenna had employed the term largely on the basis of Greek sources. For Ibn Arabi, the term imagination, khayal, designates a reality or presence that becomes manifest in three different loci. In the cosmos, as such, where existence is identical to imagination, in the macrocosm, where the intermediate world between the spiritual and corporeal worlds is imaginal, and in the microcosm, where the human soul, considered as a reality distinct from spirit and body, pertains to imagination, right? Like in our own microcosm, right? Mm. Uh, so you've got spirit, body, and self. Ruh, jism, and nafs. Our whole identity is attributed to the nafs. It's something that's like in between spirit and body. So even our own being is imaginary in some way. It's imaginal, right? This is the other thing, Tina. When we want to refer to the intermediate cosmic realm, it's called the imaginal realm. And this was helpfully coined as a term by Henry Corbin, one of the major French philosophical thinkers of the previous 20th century, Islamic thinkers, not because he's Muslim, but because he understood Islamic thought. And he was a specialist in Suhrawardi al-Maqtul, amongst other uh, spiritual figures. So he coins this term, right? The imaginal world. That's distinct from like, let's say, like an imaginary thing you invented in your head. So imaginal is a useful word. Okay. He also uses the term in a still narrower sense to designate the faculty of imagination, considered as one of the several faculties of the soul. So, what are the faculties of the soul? We have the faculty of thought, of reflection, our ability to think and reflect on things, the faculty of memory, the ability to remember things, right? So, the different dimensions of your own mind. So, imagination is one of the dimensions of your own mind. Yeah, along with reason, reflection, and memories. Oh, so he just said it. Okay. But al-Arabi sometimes distinguishes clearly among those meanings. But he is more likely to discuss imagination in general terms or in one or more of these meanings without making specific reference to the distinction among them. Ibn al-Arabi names imagination in its widest sense non-delimited imagination, khayal al-mutlaq, since it designates the situation of all existence. He calls the intermediate world of imagination discontiguous imagination. الخيال المنفصل. By the way, Tina, this is another layer. This is another very important layer, right? So I'll get into it in just a second. Since it exists independently of the viewer, and he names the soul along with the faculty of imagination contiguous imagination. الخيال المتصل. Since these are connected to the viewing subject. In the present context, our primary concern is to understand how all existence can be considered identical with imagination. These are different layers of imagination and of reality. خيال المنفصل خيال المتصل. What he translates as discontiguous imagination and contiguous imagination. Does anyone have any idea what these two words mean? If you ever came across them before? Okay, so um, imagination is a very powerful reality that the soul can connect to, but it can connect to it in two ways. Either it draws on the imagination from the realm of imagination itself, which is an independent reality and an independent realm. It exists independently of what? Of us. So, for example, if an angel comes down to a prophet to give the prophet a revelation, or the angel comes down to a saint to confirm a revelation that's given to a prophet, that angel takes on an imaginal form in order to transfer this revelation to that prophet or saint. That form which the angel embodies, well, let's say that that angel comes from a discontiguous imaginal existence. That form comes from a discontiguous imagination. So he or she, that angel exists independently of whether that prophet or saint exists. So if that prophet or saint dies, that angel continues to exist. For example, right? Whereas, let's say we're talking about a saint who has something called the power of himma, the power of, we can say, resolve, the power of having a strong resolve, or the power of an aspiration. The saint, from his own power, can bring something into existence, like literally. So let's say he brings into existence, I don't know, a gold bar. I don't know why I would say that. From the power of his own imagination, like in a very, even something that goes beyond Star Wars, in a very sci-fi kind of way, he imagines, or she imagines, this gold bar, wants it to come to existence, and says, Bismillah, and pop, there it goes, it comes into existence. He brought it into existence through the power of his imagination, but it's connected to him. He didn't draw upon the higher realm to do it. So when he dies, that gold bar disappears because it only remained in existence through him or her. So it's contiguous with him or her. It's not discontiguous. Does that make sense? If not, then inshallah, maybe there'll be more examples to clarify it. God created another creature. If you say concerning it that it is existent, you will have spoken the truth. And if you say that it is non existent, you will have spoken the truth. If you say that it is neither existent nor non existent, you will have spoken the truth. It is imagination, and it has two states: a state of contiguity, which it possesses through man and certain animals, and a state of discontiguity. To the latter, our perception becomes connected while remaining separate from it in actual fact, as in the case of Gabriel's appearance in the form of Dihya. Who is Dihya? He's the most handsome companion of the Prophet of the time. So when Gabriel descended, he took on the physical form of the most handsome man of the time, who's called Yahya bin Kalbi. Or a jinn, or an angel, which becomes manifest from the world of curtaining, from the world of veils. The difference between contiguous imagination and discontiguous imagination is that the contiguous kind disappears with the disappearance of the imaginer, while the discontiguous kind is an autonomous presence, constantly receptive toward meaning and spirits. It embodies them in accordance with its own characteristics, nothing else. Contiguous imagination derives from the discontiguous kind. Is that okay? Well, let's carry on in any case. And maybe there'll be more examples, inshallah. Ibn al-Arabi often employs the term mithal, image, as a synonym for imagination. The basic difference between the manner in which he uses the terms is that khayal refers to the mental faculty known as imagination, and the objective world out there, what's called fil kharij, known as imagination, whereas mithal is never used for the faculty. The root meaning of mithal is to resemble, to look like, to imitate, to appear in the likeness of. This root is employed much more commonly in the Quran, Hadith, and Khayal. For example, the Quran repeatedly talks about similitudes, mathal, and God's striking similitudes. That is, his explanation of various points by means of imagery and symbolism rather than explicit formulation. But the most significant use of the root for the present context is probably the single occurrence of the word tamathul, which means to appear in the image of or to become imaginalized. Concerning Gabriel's appearance to Mary at the Annunciation, the Quran says, he became imaginalized to her as a man without fault. فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. In the Hadith, the Prophet often employs this term tamathul and its near synonym tamthil. For example, in a famous Hadith that became an important principle in the science of interpreting dreams, he says, Satan cannot become imaginalized tamathul in my image, mithal, or in my form, like in dreams. So if you see the Prophet Muhammad in your dreams, it's never Satan. What is imagination in general, without reference to the various loci in which it may become manifest? According to the Sheikh, imagination is fundamentally an intermediate reality, right, between the physical world and the world of meanings. As such, it is intrinsically ambiguous and can best be defined by saying that it is neither this nor that, or both this and that. Hence, it is a barzakh, or the barzakh par excellence. By the way, guys, just as a short note, this verse is Ibn Arabi's proof that it is permissible for Christians to create images and forms in their religion. Why is that? Because the angelic spirit, who is he? Gabriel. And who is Gabriel? Gabriel is the bringer of the law. So he's kind of like equivalent to the law itself, to the Sharia. All right? The bringer of the law manifested to Mary in form, which means it is therefore permissible for the believers of that law, who adhere to that law, to also use forms, since he himself appeared in the form. He's the first form, he's the first manifester in form, right? So the people that religion, the followers of Christ, also manifest forms. And tamathul, which is to imaginalize, to make a form of, is connected to statues, which is timthal. It's the same root. Statues and making forms and imaginalizing, it's the same root, right? So then Ibn Arabi says this is why that they make forms and images in their churches. So that's permissible to them. Just as a side note. Okay. A barzakh is something that separates fossil two other things while never going to one side. Mutatarrif. As for example, the line that separates shadow from sunlight. So barzakh is a very important word. You could translate barzakh as isthmus, if you know the word isthmus, right? It's the line that separates two sides. The most obvious one is from the Quran. You've got seawater and sweet water. And there's a division in the middle that separates them. That very thin point that separates them, that's called a barzakh. It's not like a third side. It's an invisible dimension that composes of both sides, or it's made of neither side, but it still separates them. So it's something. It's called an isthmus or a barzakh. So a barzakh is something that separates two other sides while never going to one side, or like let's say like oil and water, for example, as well. As for example, the line that separates shadow from sunlight, like if you look at your own shadow and sunlight, the line that separates the two is called the barzakh between them. So the barzakh is the or the excuse me or the isthmus. It can be applied to anything when it's in between two other things. It's the thing in the middle that separates two things between it, or anything. God says He lets forth the two seas that meet together. Between them a barzakh they do not overpass. In other words, the one sea does not mix with the other. Though sense perception might be incapable of separating the two things, the rational faculty judges that there is a barrier, hajiz, between them, which separates them. The intelligible barrier is the barzakh, which our minds can deduce of, right? They can deduce that fact. If it is perceived by the senses, it is one of the two things, not the barzakh. So the barzakh is something you understand with your mind. You can't see it. Any two adjacent things are in need of a barzakh, which is neither the one nor the other, but which possesses the power of both. The barzakh is something that separates a known from an unknown, an existent from a non existent, a negated from an affirmed, an intelligible from a non intelligible. It is called barzakh as a technical term, istilah, and in itself it is intelligible, but it is only imagination. For when you perceive it and are intelligent, you will know that you have perceived an ontological thing, shay'un wujudi, upon which your eyes have fallen. But you will know for certain by proofs that there is nothing there in origin and root. So, what is this thing for which you have affirmed an ontological thingness, and from which you have negated that thingness in the state of your affirming it? Like, it's a weird paradox. Imagination is neither existent nor non existent, neither known nor unknown, neither negated nor affirmed. For example, a person perceives his form in a mirror. He knows for certain that he has perceived his form in one respect, and he knows for certain that he has not perceived his form in another respect. Because the mirror is not you, so you're not actually looking at you, but you're also looking at you. He cannot deny that he has seen his form, and he knows that his form is not in the mirror, nor is it between himself and the mirror. Hence, he is neither a truth teller nor a liar. In his words, I saw my form, I did not see my form. The cosmos is non-delimited imagination, since everything other than God displays the properties of imagination. The continual creation and constant transformation of the cosmos are nothing if not the appearance of the reality of he, not he. The reality of imagination is continuous change in every state, and manifestation in every form. There is no true existence that does not accept change except God. And there is nothing in verified being, al-wujud al-muhaqqaq, except God. Like if you like what's verified, if you investigate with your intellect what is the reality of something, it must be God. So that's called verified being. If you verify, you test out the being of any object in existence, its reality is God, right? So there is no true existence that does not accept change except God. And there's nothing in verified being except God. As for everything other than He, that dwells in imaginal existence, al-wujud al-khayali. Let me see that again. As for everything other than He, that dwells in imaginal existence, right? But when the real becomes manifest within this imaginal existence, He only becomes manifest in keeping with its reality, not in His essence, which is true being. Do you see that? Like when He manifests in an object, He is keeping with the properties of that object. He doesn't manifest with his own essence. Because if he manifests with his own essence, it would burn away the object. Because since God is like absolute light, right? since he's absolute manifestation. That is why it is mentioned in the sound hadith that he undergoes transmutation in his self-disclosure to his servants. This is also the meaning of his words, everything is annihilated, since no state, whether engendered or divine, remains in the cosmos, except its face. Meaning its face, meaning its essence, since the face of a thing is its essence. But so a divine state doesn't remain? I suppose so. If it's a state, everything is annihilated since no state, whether that could also mean whether created or eternal, remains in the cosmos, except its face. Whether engendered or divine, except its face. Okay. Meaning its essence, since the face of a thing is its essence. So you will not be annihilated. But how can the form, you in your reality can't be totally annihilated in your deepest essence, which is God. So you will not be, so you as you will not be annihilated. But how can the form into which he transmutes himself be compared with the form from which he transmutes himself? The form from which he transmutes himself shares in annihilation, in the sense that it used to be one form and now it's a second form. Everything other than the essence of the real is in the station of transmutation, speedy and slow. Everything other than the essence of the real is intervening imagination and vanishing shadow. No engendered thing remains in this world, the hereafter, what is between the two, neither spirit nor soul nor anything other than God. I mean, the essence of God, upon a single state. Rather, it undergoes continual change from form to form, constantly and forever. And imagination is nothing but this, right? The continual change of images, the continual change of form. So the cosmos only became manifest within imagination. It is imagined in itself. So it is it, and it is not it. Among the things that confirm what we have mentioned is the verse, you did not throw when you threw. Hence, he negated the same thing that he affirmed. In other words, you imagined that you threw, but there's no doubt that he threw. That is why he said, when you threw. Then he said, throwing is correct, but God threw. That is, you became manifest, O Muhammad, in a form of God. Hence, your throwing hit the mark in a manner in which the throwing of no mortal man hits the mark. All right, guys? And then next time we'll go into dreams as well. So we can probably just leave it there, since this is a whole section in itself. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? I mean, to be fair, it's pretty heavy, right?